Head over to miniaturemarket.com where they have thousands of board games at discounted prices like Renature. Renature is a beautiful domino laying game where you're going to be placing dominoes and matching animals when you do that, and possibly placing plants in areas that are beside where you've placed. And you'll be placing different plants that have different heights that give you more and more power. Because these plants will give you points when you place them for plants of equal or lesser size, and when these areas are completely surrounded, not diagonal, you'll score. The higher points for the higher power and the lower for the lower, but the one that closes it gets an endgame point as well. And certain animals are wild, giving you more flexibility and being able to place any animal next to them. But players can be sneaky because they all have neutral pieces, and if they tie, they're not considered there, so you can cause other players, including you, to score and swoop in and get the big points. And in this case, if you're all alone, you get all the points. And you can spend clouds, which can do cool things like change the wild animal, or take another turn, or take back some of the pieces that you've placed earlier. Once the dominoes run out, you'll have some secret endgame scoring, and whoever has the most is the winner. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, Renature. Beautiful art and table presence. The depth of complexity is huge. Simple rules, but tons of depth. No complexity, simple but great. You're trying to figure out where and when to place the dominoes and your plants. You're getting points for plants themselves. Which one do you put? Do you want to get taken over? Do you want to take someone else over? You get points for every plant you put there. If it's just so good. The neutral plants can really mess players up. Closing and majorities, but the ties cancel. You can really hose people over, getting all the points if you can force other players to tie. The clouds facilitate even more depth with timing of when I'm going to do things, taking extra turns, changing the wild animal. Endgame scoring, not knowing, is awesome. I think this game is going to possibly win the Spiel des Jahres. I hope it does. There's no way it's not going to be in my top 10 game of the year. It's very cutthroat, so watch out about that. And I think it's best with 2 or 3 players, even though I'll never turn down a 4 player because you only get 13 turns. And I would have liked to have seen an alternate layout on the back of the board, but this game is fantastic. It's going to be one of the best of the year for sure. I loved it. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today we find ourselves in a polluted valley. We're going to be planting different trees and turf and having animals come into this, and we're going to renature this area. So today we're taking a look at Renature. This is an abstract strategy game. This is brought to us by Capstone Games in North America, and it's designed by the great duo Michael Kiesling and Wolfgang Kramer. Another duo that I love many of their games. Like Linko and Coal Baron and many others. So let me take a look at this. I'll show you how it's played. I'll see you on the other side. Renature is a domino placement game for 2 to 4 players that has a lot of area control with it. You're trying to have the most points, and you'll do so by placing dominoes, placing plants next to it, and then controlling certain areas for certain points if you have the most control when that region scores. Each player will have 3 dominoes that they could possibly place on their turn to choose from, and when they place a domino, they need to make sure that the animal type matches on both sides if there's animals on both sides. Here, just has to match the back because there's nothing over here, and they can place this, and when they do, they can place a plant beside either one of these animals they place. So here or here, or here or here, because you're placing plants in the dirt, but you're always placing the dominoes in the brook section like that. Now each player has a certain board they'll use, and they'll set it up with a certain amount of pieces depending on the amount of players. They'll have their own colors, pieces of plants they can plant. Everyone will have some neutral ones, which are these brown ones. Now this player's already placed a couple of these. Now so when they can play any one of these, but you're limited to these for the whole entire game. Now these are at different levels. This is at a level 1, this is the height of level 2, level 3, and level 4. And that's important because right now we have a blue height 1 turf here, and when this ends up having a domino here, so it pretty much closes this in from all orthogonal ways, it's going to score, and it's going to score, the first place is going to get the higher number, and the second place is going to get the lower number. Now this is at a level of 1, so if I wanted to, I could put this level 2 here because it's beside the domino I placed. Now we wouldn't score this now, this sort of just sits in here right now until this closes. So I wouldn't get those points now, but I'm setting myself up for that later. Because later, if I played this domino, because the turtle matches the turtle, this is now closed in, diagonal doesn't matter. Also, sometimes it'll be where some spots get sort of isolated, you can't place a domino there. As long as this, you can't place a domino to any side of this, or it's full like this, it'll score. And here, white has more, because this is at a 2, and that's at a 1, and that's from those levels I showed you on the board. So this player is going to get 2 points, this player is going to get 1 point, and the player that closed it in, which might be neither of these, gets to keep this. On the back of this are end game points. They range from 1 to 5. The lower ones tend to be closer to 1 or 2, and the higher ones become possibly closer to 5. There's some other clever things you could do. Let's say another player puts this, you get the bird and the bird. They could place here or here or here. Now this one, orange is fighting white there, but let's say that player wanted to screw people up and place this here. Now one thing I haven't told you about is scoring when you place plants. When you place a plant, you're going to score 1 point for the plant, and then 1 point for every plant in that area that's at least equal or lesser value. So I get a point for this because it's equal, and a point for that one because it's less. So when a player places here and places that plant, even if it's a neutral color, they'll get, in this case, 3 points, which is really cool. And so now this has done something interesting when this one resolves. Because let's say someone just placed this tile. This is an isolated spot, no domino can be placed there. All the other areas that aren't diagonal around here are there, so it's going to score. Now this and this, anytime you have shoot that are the same, they're considered not being there, which is amazing because even though these two players, it's a neutral in this, they don't score, that means this little white turf here that's a level 1 is going to get this entire 3 points. But because these aren't here, they're also going to get the bottom ones. So 3 and 1, they're going to get 4 points, and whoever closes it, of course, will keep this for endgame points. So having things tied, considered not being there, is huge in the strategy of the scoring because you can really mess people up with those neutral pieces. Now, there's animals up on the board here. It starts with butterflies being the joker, essentially wild. So I could place this butterfly like this. And if this butterfly was actually on the ground, like let's say it was already there, then you could place anything next to it. So that's wild, and it allows players to place as normally, but that's wild. You can use these in all cool ways. Let's say you got a bunch of turtles in your hand. You could spend 2 of those clouds to make turtle wild, and you could do it anytime on your turn. So you can make it wild and then use a turtle domino to place. You could spend 3 clouds to take an entire another turn as soon as your other turn's done. Or you can spend 1, 2, 3, or 4 and take one of the plants from the board and put it back on your board. And it can even be, it's got to be your color or neutral, but it could be one that's already been closed. Now you got to have room for it. Like this is a white bush, I could put it like that. And again, in this case, it would have costed 2 of those. So that's pretty, at the end of the game, each one of these is going to give you negative points if they're still on your board equal to the level. So if I don't place this, it's going to be worth -4. But typically you're placing most everything, but you're trying to figure out when to place the right things. That's pretty much it. Whoever has the most points, once all players have run out of dominoes, and you do the final end game scoring, which is the backs of all of those, the people that own them from closing them out. And any leftover clouds you'll get a point for, and again, -point for any trees on your board. Whoever has the most is the winner. There you have Renature. I've got to say, this was one of my top 10 most anticipated games for Spiele Digital last year, but didn't end up coming out till now in 2021 in North America. I had huge hopes for this, and a lot of times when you have a game that you're this excited about, if you're this excited more often than not, it's really hard and unfair for the game to try to live up to it. But I gotta say, not only did this live up to my high expectations for it, it even surpassed them. So let's show you why. This game, beautiful art and table presence. The animals on the dominoes, the tactile feel of the dominoes, the different trees and plants that you're putting on there, it just looks awesome on the table, draws you right in. I always talk about my depth to complexity ratio. How deep can a game be without a lot of complexity? So less complexity, but more depth. So the more depth you have, with less and less complexity, the better that ratio is, and those tend to be my sweet spot. Games that don't have a ton of mechanisms, I mean, sure, I can play heavy games, but the more complex it is, the harder it is to get to the table, and the more I need to like it in order for it to stick around and come out often. Where these games you can take out, teach the easy rules, tons of depth. This is part of the Capstone Games Simply Complex line, and I love that line because it pretty much finds games that are like this style. Now, the other reason why I love this is you're trying to figure out where and when to place those dominoes and plants. And you're looking at the board, and you say, well, I can place this here, this here, this here, and you've got both short-term goals, you've got long-term goals, trying to figure out which plants to use up, which plants have other players used up. Do I want to place a plant? Usually you're going to place them, but not always, because those plants are negative at the end of the game. So you want to make sure you get them all out, but which ones do you place and in what order? Do you place the smaller ones for the smaller points and the big ones for the bigger points? But if everyone does that, you can flip that on its head. It's just, it's awesome. The points for the plants themselves is interesting too, because you're like, oh, okay, well, there's only been turf placed there. So I can either just place a turf, the lowest one, and let's get a point for this and a point for all the other ones that are there that are turf. I can get 4 points for just placing one turf. Or I can place not waste, but place one of my bigger ones, the bushes. I'll still get the 4 points, but now I have a majority, and things like that. So you're constantly thinking about what to put and when to get plants, put the right plants in the right spot at the right time, because as other players gain majorities and do this, you're slamming down that, hey, I want the majority in here, but you're also opening yourself up to other players piggybacking on your piece there and getting points off it over and over for every additional piece that gets placed there. Another thing to think about. I love the neutral plants in here. And even when I was just reading the rules of this game, I thought about this and I was like, this sounds, and it does act just like the sort of white neutral dice in the popular dice game Las Vegas. That was a 2012 Spiel des Jahres nominee, where you can place dice that are neutral and it can screw everybody up. And the scoring aspect of that, of closing in the majorities, is like, hey, if you can tie somebody else, even with a neutral, those don't exist. And that's awesome, because that can not only just kick someone out of scoring, but it can leave only one player there, since those don't exist anymore. And they can get both points on that scoring chit. So a lot of times you're trying to figure out, when can I close? When can I use this? When can I mess this up with a neutral? The neutral aspects, and it's even great with 2 players, because it doesn't feel like a dummy player. It really feels like there's a real third player playing, but you're both playing it. It's amazing. You can really play spoiler messing with those neutral plants. It's a really awesome aspect of this game. Figuring out when to close things and get the majorities. Because if you close it, you get the chit, right? And sometimes you can close things at the same time that you're putting a plant and winning the majority. Sometimes that's when you want to do it. Otherwise, you know what? You're like, I don't want to waste all those to close that. I'm already winning it. At the end of the game, those score anyways. And I'm not sure I showed that in the overview, but things that aren't totally scored, closed, still score at the end of the game just like normal. So it's like, I don't want to waste my time scoring that. I'm already got a majority, but someone might come in there and get it later, right? So there's a lot to think about here. And again, those ties canceling is one of the best things in the entire game. But you're also trying to figure out the clouds, when to use those clouds and what to do it. They facilitate even more depth, especially with the timing. Like, oh, I'm going to play this, change the wild to this, go here, close this, I'm going to put this here, I'm going to get this. And you can have some pretty big turns with those. I like it. Or, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to spend 3 clouds, I'm going to take another turn, I'm going to do this, I'm going to close this, I get this. Big turns. Or, hey, you know what? I am going to pay this 4 and take my big tree back and put it here, right? And it's just a really cool thing. It just gives you so much more depth, and it really is like the spice of the game, is when and when to use those clouds, where to use them, when to use them. They're worth points if you don't use them, but usually you're gonna get more than 1 point when you use each one of those. So you're trying to figure that out. I like that the end game scoring is not known, so you do have an idea of where people are, but you can see how many tiles people have gotten from closing, but you don't know what they are, And so there's a little bit of, I'm not sure if I'm going to win this or not if it's close towards the end. So I am in love with this game. It is unbelievable. Now this game on Board Game Geek is a 2020 release, but it's really considered a 2021 release because, first of all, it came in at the very last week or 2 of December in Europe, and it didn't even get to North America till halfway through January. So, and I know Capstone Games is considering this a 2021 release. So this game, I would be very surprised if it's not in my top 10 at the end of the year. And I think, since one of the co-designers of this game is the designer of Azul, Michael Kiesling, Azul got so much praise. And I was lukewarm on it when it first came out. I loved the second one. It's still my favorite one. The third one I liked. The first one, now that I've played it with the expansion, I really love that again, And that game got so much praise, won the Spiele des Jahres, got so much hype, and I felt like it was overhyped at the time that it came out. I think this game deserves the hype that Azul got. And I think this game could easily be this year's Spiele des Jahres winner. And I hope it is, because it's amazing. Now, no game is perfect, even though this one's very close. There are some things that you might need to know about from a negative perspective. Is number one, this game is pretty cutthroat. You're constantly messing people over, trying to take over their areas, trying to place neutrals to mess them up, taking your plants back, taking back neutral plants to screw other people up. You're constantly in everybody's face, and it might be too combative for some. Is it more cutthroat than Azul? I don't think so. You could really hose people over with leaving them a bunch of tiles in Azul. It's similar to that, but it is kind of cutthroat. I prefer it with 2 or 3 players. I'll never turn down a game with 4 players, but with 2 players, you're getting 26 dominoes, 26 turns. 4-player game, you're only getting 13 turns. But you have the same amount, so you have half the turns, so the board changes quite a bit more. But you do have the same amount of clouds. So you're gonna have less turns, but those turns are gonna be bigger. So you're gonna have less turns totally, but each turn's gonna be at a more percentage of big, exciting turns. There's a little thing there. 2 players, like I can place this tile here, knowing I have the animal on the other side of that. I'm gonna try to combo this together with my next turn, but that's less likely to be there available when you play with 3 or 4 players. So 2 and 3 is my favorite. 4, I'll never turn down a game, but I like 2 and 3 the best because of that. Also, the back of the board has a beautiful piece of artwork on it, but I really think this was a missed opportunity to have an alternate layout of the board. You know, and I don't think I'll need, this game is an instant classic. This is gonna be one of the games I think that 20, 30 years from now, we're still gonna be talking about. That's how good I think this game is. The last game I felt like this was, for a modern game, was Mandala, and I'm still playing the heck out of that one. But one thing I think they missed here is an alternative board on the back, just a different layout, you know? Or have tiles made of the different layouts of those areas and allow people to make their own map on the back with just those things, with a few rules of what to do, what not to do. That way you could have an infinite amount of play styles, and you might have to think completely different if some of the earlier ones were higher scoring. Do I waste all my big things there and I'll have nothing towards the end? Stuff like that. Anyway, I think a missed opportunity, not a big, I'm nitpicking here, because this game is fantastic, and because of that, it's getting my highest honor, which is a saxophone serenade. So I am gonna serenade this into my gaming library, which means I gotta find a game to get rid of. But this has been the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships, by helping you find the next one you'll love. Hit it. Lucky Duck Games has 4 new games available now. In the Court of Miracles, you lead a guild of beggars, scheme with sinister plots, and use trickery to build your own renown in an attempt to take over 16th century Paris. Baron Voodoo is an abstract strategy game involving the collection of thematic soul dice, and it made my top 10 most anticipated releases at Essen's Spiele this year. Kingdom Rush Rift in Time is a tower defense with epic heroes that includes a campaign and an infinite replayability mode. It was hugely popular on Kickstarter, raising over $1 million. Chronicles of Crime 1400 is a standalone follow-up to the award-winning Chronicles of Crime, where you'll be solving 4 unique crimes in medieval Paris. These are all available in stores now, and you can learn more and order them at luckyduckgames.com.